Saffron Power, which was very well received in India, which was about the rise of the BJP and the saffron power in India, which was again very well received book. Both these books by Routledge are very great achievements of my dear friend Professor Mujib. And then he is a regular writer for Outlook, for Hindu, and for other important national dailies. He's also working on a very important project, which is about citizenship in the University of New York. So today again he will be talking about the issue of citizenship in India. I have requested Mujib Sahab to be bilingual, using the Hindi language as well, along with the English language with which we teach in English medium universities like AMU and Jamia. But he'll be conversing with you in the Hindi language as well. So welcome Mujib Sahab, and I'm very thankful that he has taken time off for our session and is here to talk to us. So please Mujib Sahab, please go ahead, start your presentation.
Yes.
भाई कैसी आवाज आ रही चिल्लाने की?
Sir,
माइक ऑन कर लीजिए मुजीब साहब.
Yeah, many thanks to Professor Beg for his generous introduction and for this invitation to interact with you on this particular subject. We have agreed that I will speak roughly around 35 to 40 minutes and followed by a Q&A session. The topic that I have agreed to speak on is about the citizenship debate in India. And it's a subject in which there has been considerable, the most debated and subject topic in modern Indian politics today. So there are very sharp opinion on this particular subject, and it has caused a lot of polarization and protest and politics at different levels in our country, in nook and corner of our country. So what I'm going to do is to basically lay out my own argument and analysis of this particular issue. And then we will start having Q&A and we will discuss it further on that. So I have prepared notes, so I'm going to read it out. And as Professor Beg has suggested that I have to be bilingual, I hope that's okay with people coming from Bengal and Maharashtra and others, or Tamil Nadu and Kerala. So in case anyone has any issue in understanding any particular portion of my lecture, please do send me a message through chat. I will be keeping an eye on my chat section also, so that in case there is any particular question and all of that, or any concerns, do let me know about it. All right. So the citizenship issue stands out as the most prominent among all the issues that define the content and direction of the political future of Indian Muslims. That's because the kind of rights, such as legal and fundamental, that are enshrined in citizenship of a community essentially determines their relationship with the modern Indian state as well as society. The subject of citizenship, particularly concerning Muslims, has become a raging debate in the country today with the passage of Citizenship Act of 2019 in the month of December. The protests against the CAA Act has received widespread global attention. According to Nirja Jayal Gopal, through the Citizenship Amendment Bill, I quote, I'm just reading out a quotation, through the Citizenship Amendment Bill ostensibly relates only to migrants seeking the legal status of citizenship, but this is not just about migrants. The threat, rhetorical or otherwise, of a nationwide NRC shows that the fig leaf of illegal immigration is being used to bring the citizenship of all Muslim citizens into question. There are different dimensions to the Hindu-Muslim relationship in India since independence. It's important for us to go back to history to make sense of this particular debate. So, ये जो debate है, ये debate Hindu-Muslim story of Indian politics of 20th century particularly, it is primarily located in that. And it's very important कि ये जो कहानी है, इस कहानी के बारे में हम लोग थोड़ा बहुत सोचें and then we can be able to make sense of it, that why this particular debate has become such a burning debate in India. Why there are so much of emotions, such strong political views that various sections of society have articulated or expressed with respect to this particular debate. I have argued, मैं एक ऐसे लिखा था 2010 पे, जिसमें मैंने ये argument दिया था कि that there are three particular dimensions or features of Hindu-Muslim relations in India. Those features are defined by the concept of violence, by the concept of victimhood, and by the concept of domination. एक तरफ this relationship has got the violence part of it because there are always Hindu-Muslim riots that continue to happen. As you know that it has happened very recently in Delhi itself. There was a Delhi riot in the month of February. So there is a concept of victimhood. A good majority of Muslim community perceives itself as a victim of it. Victim of number of issues, number of problems. And that has defined the debate between the Hindu-Muslim question, particularly in the western and the northern part of India. And increasingly it is becoming more and more raging debate in Bengal and elsewhere. Also it is becoming part of the discourse. The third is the domination. There is also the perception that, there has been a Muslim rule for almost 1,000 years in this country, and that particular rule has its own contribution to this particular debate. There are different memories of it. There are some bad memories and there are good memories, and depending on which side of it and what kind of memories that you're using, that has also contributed to the animosity and the debate that is taking place between Hindus and Muslims in this country. So this particular debate has a deep historical dimension to it. And the citizenship debate is informed by the deep historical understanding. जो इतिहास में जो भी कुछ हुआ है बहुत दिनों से, तो उसका एक काफी असर हमारे इस डिबेट में नजर आता है, और ग्लोबल डायमेंशन में इस डिबेट को उसी तरीके से देखने का कोशिश किया जा रहा है. So, in a jointly authored op-ed in New York Times titled "We are witnessing a rediscovery of India's Republic" on December 22nd, Rohit De, who teaches at Yale University, who is an author of a very good book called A People's Constitution, Law and Everyday Life in Indian Republic. जो लोग political science और social science में हैं, उनके लिए एक बहुत अच्छा किताब है. और Surabhi Ranganathan, who is the director of Center of International Law of University of Cambridge, उन्होंने ये चीज लिखा है इस डिबेट के बारे में. The CAA offers an accelerated pathway to citizenship for Hindu, Sikh, Zoroastrian, Buddhist and Christian migrants from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, but excludes Muslims. ये जो op-ed न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स में लिखा गया था दिसंबर 27 तारीख को 2019 में, it effectively creates a hierarchical system of citizenship determined by an individual's religion, reminiscent of Myanmar's 1982 citizenship law. इन्होंने म्यांमार का 1982 सिटीजनशिप लॉ उसके सिलसिले में उसके साथ कंपेयर किया है, बोला है कि ये जो सिटीजनशिप है वो उस तरीके का है, which has privileged citizenship for indigenous races, excluded Rohingyas and paved the ground for the genocide violence against Rohingyas. तो इन्होंने उस तरीके से आर्गुमेंट न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स के op-ed में किया था. Between December 9 to 12, the Citizenship Amendment Act 2019 was fiercely debated in both houses of India's parliament, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. The bill was introduced by India's Home Minister Amit Shah. The Prime Minister was absent in the parliament because he was campaigning in Jharkhand. In both houses of the parliament, Amit Shah made a case with forceful arguments about why Muslims from neighboring countries such as Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh should not be included in the Amendment Act. According to Mr. Saha, Muslims are not a religious minorities in this Muslim majority nations, hence disqualified. According to the CAA, 6 major religious groups such as Hindus, Sikhs, Jains, Buddhists, Parsis and Christians from Pakistan and Afghanistan who have migrated to India before December 31st of 2019 and have lived in India for 5 years are considered eligible for citizenship but not Muslims. The Citizenship Amendment Act as a bill form, in its bill form, ये पहली बार लोकसभा में इंट्रोड्यूस हुआ था, पहले लोकसभा में इंट्रोड्यूस हुआ और जिस सिलसिले में 9 घंटे तक for 9 hours there was a debate in the Lok Sabha of India, and the debate was won by the government. The government got 311 votes as opposed to 80 votes. Following points, however, need to be borne in mind for a sober assessment of this vexed issue. India's first Citizenship Act 1955, based on a very well-informed debate in the Constituent Assembly at the time. However, multiple modifications have occurred ever since, resulting in various acts, and now this one. तो जो इंडिया का जो पहला सिटीजनशिप हुआ है बना था वो 1955 में बना था और उसके बाद में कई सारे changes have number of amendments have taken place at different points of time, about which I will discuss in detail in course of time. Or this is the last one. So the basic point that is very important to understand or underline is this, that there has been an evolution in the thinking of citizenship debate since 1955 till 2019. Often responding to various domestic and global situations. In this process of evolution, India has moved from what is called the sui juris to sui sanguinis, which is the descent-based citizenship. In this larger background, Amit Shah has alluded to the partition, its connection to the citizenship debate is not entirely off the mark. So the partition of India has played a very important role in determining the present form of present debate that is taking place on the citizenship debate, and we will discuss about this. Owing to partition resulting in the movement of people on both sides, there was an animating debate in its Constituent Assembly on this particular question. In a very, very disturbingly communally charged environment, as many of you know that the partition was accompanied by a massive violence on both sides, in which ordinary civilians suffered enormously. And this is an aspect that those who supported partition and those who opposed partition on both sides, they could not just foresee. And a lot of people who were initially reluctant for partition subsequently endorsed partition, believed that once the partition takes place, the problem of India, Pakistan, or South Asia in general, or colonial India would be over. There would be no further debate. But it seems today that when we look at the citizenship debate, that the partition probably has caused more problems than solutions to the continent, and the debate continues in this continent and elsewhere. In this country and elsewhere. In Indian Constitution, articles from 5 to 11 deal with the citizenship issue. But it was the Article 7 that dealt with the large number of Muslims who first fled during the partition-related violence, but later chose to return. In the deliberation, 2 words were used, migrant and refugees. Hindus fleeing from Pakistan were identified as refugees, and returning Muslims were identified as migrants. While there was not any overt use of religious identity, but it was certainly clear what these phrases meant through the lens of religion. Fortunately, wisdom prevailed and the Constituent Assembly adopted a democratic conception of citizenship instead of embracing an idea of racial citizenship. This is how the Citizenship Act of 1955, the notion of jus solis or citizenship by birth, acquired statutory basis. Therefore, the Assembly adopted an enlightened and modern civilized concept of citizenship as recorded in the Constituent Assembly debates of India. In short, India's first Citizenship Act of 1955 was religion neutral. It was consistent with India's secular foundational structure, an ideology around which the freedom movement was based on. In subsequent years, some scholars have argued that this religion-neutral dimension of Indian Citizenship Act has moved towards more descent-based citizenship, also called the sui sanguinis, dependent on religious identity. Two issues further need to be kept in mind for the further clarity of the issue. The first is that the present act should not be seen as a masterstroke by the BJP government, though it will appear that it is a very smart move that was done purely by BJP government at this particular point of time. Because the present act is essentially gradually being built up over the years by various amendments that have taken place. So the movement has been very slow and gradual. And in this movement, BJP was not in the scene because it was not a political force, say 30, 35 years ago. So a lot of amendment that took place, which has facilitated this movement towards the descent-based, towards this particular form of act. There has been collaboration by the so-called secular governments as well. So that's the point I'm trying to make. The second point that's important to pay attention to, जो दूसरा point है, वो है कि the present debate is deeply entangled in Assam politics. There are lots of people who are from Assam here, so those who are direct victims or witness and far more knowledgeable about what has been unfolding in Assam than many of us who are sitting in Delhi. Because people who are sitting in Delhi, whether in academia or in political power, always have the misconception that they understand the rest of India very well, which is not true. You know. So the second issue is very important to understand that Assam politics has a tremendous amount of influence in this particular debate that is unfolding in India, or in a manner that the citizenship debate has unfolded over the years, or has taken the shape of the kind that it has taken today. So the 9-hour debate in India's Lok Sabha revolved primarily around three key themes. One is that rights of minorities in India. The opposition said that the bill is discriminatory against the Muslims and linked to the linked religion to citizenship. Amit Saha, the Home Minister of India, responded to it by saying that the bill had nothing to do with the Muslims and argued the bill is not even 0.01% against Muslims, it is against infiltrators. He further presented data on the persecution of Hindus and other minority faiths in Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh. The second point is that the constitutional rights and provisions. The opposition alleged that the bill violated Indian Constitution's fundamental rights, particularly Article 14 that guarantees equality of all citizens before law. But Saha justified it as part of the provision allowed for reasonable classification in Constitution, which the government has met by not legislating in favor of any particular religion or community. The third important dimension or the theme in this particular debate in the Lok Sabha was the northeastern issue. Opposition argued that the National Register of Citizens or NRC exercise aimed at detecting illegal immigrants has failed and no further effort for its All India application. Further, the Citizenship Amendment Act, according to the opposition, favored Hindu immigrants, which was the reason for the protest against the bill all over the country. So these are the three key issues around which the debate in the parliament took place, both in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So in both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, government was able to win the debate. There was a fair chance that in Rajya Sabha, the government could have lost the debate or lost the bill. But that did not happen because of the clever management by the government in winning over some and encouraging others to leave, not participate in this particular debate. So, as I mentioned to you that it's very important to reflect on Assam politics. Assam में क्या हुआ, उसके ऊपर में थोड़ा हमको नजर देना जरूरी है. और असम का जो domestic development, to 1971 war, influx of migrants of all kinds, particularly Muslim migrants from neighboring countries, particularly from Bangladesh, or Assam movement, or Assam Accord. ये सारा चीज को सही तरीके से समझने की जरूरत है हिंदुस्तान में जो अभी की सिटीजनशिप डिबेट चल रही है उसको समझने के लिए. What has triggered fear among Indian citizens, particularly Muslims, is the Modi government's attempt to link the Citizenship Act with the National Register for Citizenship or NRC, that has its roots in Assam politics. Given the Assam experience of the NRC and its countless bureaucratic follies resulting in exclusion of Muslims and poor people, Muslims have solid reasons to be fearful of their being stateless owing to lack of documents. जो एक सबसे बड़ा आर्गुमेंट दिया जाता है कि हिंदुस्तान में बहुत सारे लोग इतने गरीब हैं और ज्यादातर हालत इतना बुरा है, जैसा बहुत सारा नेचुरल डिजास्टर आता है, स्टॉर्म आता है या फ्लड आता है, तो आम इंसान कोई इतना मेटिकुलस नहीं होता है जो कि गवर्नमेंट को पास उसके पास डॉक्यूमेंट होगा, जितने सारा डॉक्यूमेंट दैट द गवर्नमेंट मांगेगा. और इस वजह से बहुत एक आर्गुमेंट ये उभर कर आया है दैट देयर इज एन आर्गुमेंट दैट पुअर पीपल, मैसिव नंबर ऑफ पुअर पीपल वुड suffer because they don't have documents. Okay? तो बंगाल की एक जो मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट है महुआ मित्र, उन्होंने ये बात पार्लियामेंट में कहा था. इस कंट्री में मिनिस्टर लोग अपना सर्टिफिकेट नहीं दिखा सकते हैं. वहां पर उन लोग ये कहते हैं कि आम इंसान को उनके पास 5-7 सर्टिफिकेट एंड डॉक्यूमेंट्स, लैंड, वोटिंग कार्ड से ले और ऑल ऑफ दैट, लैंड प्रॉपर्टी, ये सारा चीज दिखाना उनको जरूरी है. सो एक चीज तो सबके समझ में आता है कि हमारे कंट्री में डॉक्यूमेंटेशन उतना सही तरीके से नहीं है, जिसके लिए ज्यादातर गरीब लोग जो होते हैं, वो हिंदू हो या मुसलमान हो या बुद्धिस्ट हो या जैन हो, कहीं पे भी हो, वो सारे बहुत सफर करते हैं और वो बहुत परेशान रहते हैं बेचारे. और हमारी ब्यूरोक्रेसी इतनी करप्ट है कि ये सारे चीज को मैनेज करने भी बहुत दिक्कत होती है. So, during the parliament debate, the Home Minister emphatically said his government would implement NRC nationwide. Assam has a long and complex history of in-migration from 19th century onwards. Two scholars, Sanjeev Barua and Sanjay Hajarika, have extensively written on the politics of Assam and its implications for India and the region. In a recent book, Sanjeev Barua, titled In the Name of Nation, India and its Northeast, published by Stanford University Press, discusses the issues such as migration, settlement, regional geopolitics, and resource extraction. In this particular book, Barua writes, Professor Sanjeev Barua writes in this new book, the partition generated a massive new flow of Hindus into India is well known. What is less known, and contrary to the expectations of the architects of partition, is that it did not stop an old pattern of migration from densely populated deltaic eastern Bengal into a relatively sparsely populated northeast India, that of poor Muslim peasants in search of land and livelihoods. So इन किताब में ये आर्गुमेंट करते हैं कि बहुत सारे मुसलमान जो असम को आए हैं, वो बांग्लादेश से आए नहीं है, वो बहुत सारे लोग के हिंदुस्तान के जो सेंट्रल एरिया है, जैसा बिहार, उत्तर प्रदेश, उड़ीसा, इस जगह से भी गए हैं. Even during partition, Assam and its future was of a heated debate among the leaders of Muslim League and Congress owing to its demography. There were strategies deployed to sway the partition favor by rival political parties at the time. Since 1947, subsequently for a variety of reasons, such as Indo-Pak War of 1965, Bangladesh Liberation War of 1971, led to massive migration. Otherwise, Assam has been a destination for Indians even before from various parts of India, particularly Bengal, Bihar, and other states, for a variety of reasons, particularly owing to the employment in tea plantations. Sanjay Hajarika, in his widely read book called Rites of Passage, published in 2000, has given a detailed analysis of this dimension of Assam politics and history pertaining to migration. The passage of CAA 2019 came amidst widespread protest in Assam, which spread like wildfire to other parts of India. It caught Modi government with surprise and found itself cornered in a manner that it never experienced since 2014. The Assam protest grew day by day despite Modi government's assurances measures will be taken under Clause 6 of the 1985 Assam Accord to address the concerns of the agitators. Protests remained unabated and military had to be deployed on the ground. On December 12, 2020, Prime Minister Modi posted on Twitter, "I want to assure my brothers and sisters of Assam that they have nothing to worry after the passing of the Citizenship Amendment Act. I want to assure them no one can take away your rights, unique identity, and beautiful culture. It will continue to flourish and grow. The central government and I are totally committed to constitutionally safeguard the political, linguistic, cultural, and land rights of Assamese people as per the spirit of the Clause 6. The Clause 6 of Prime Minister Modi was alluding to is from Assam Accord of 1985. It deals with the safeguards of the Assamese people. It reads as follows: constitutional, legislative, and administrative safeguards as may be appropriate shall be provided to protect, preserve, and promote the culture, social, linguistic identity, and heritage of Assamese people. The communities to be migrants in Assam have expressed concern over the recommendation. Someone has mic.
Please unmute audio. Please unmute your audio.
Yeah, please mute it. Mohammed Nasir, please mute your Mohammed Nasir, please mute your microphone. There is a lot of background noise. Please mute your microphone.
Mohammed Nasir, please mute.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the clause 6 of that accord says that the major communities persecuting migrants in Assam have expressed concern over the recommendation of the High Court Committee and the implementation of clause 6. These communities are of Bengal origin or Bengali speaking Muslims referred as Miyas or Bengali Hindus or Gurkhas. On the discussion of Pension Citizenship Act of 2019, the key turning point is the Assam Accord of 1985. A memorandum of settlement signed by the Government of India and Assam government and leaders of the All India Assam Students Union and Assam Gana Parishad in New Delhi on August 15 in the same year of 1985. This was intended to end the violent movement that started in 1979 and lasted for 6 years, with an ambiguous objective to make Assam infiltration free. During the 6 long years of this historic movement, roughly around 900 people, close to 900 people were killed. The Assam Accord brought closer to a phase of great violence and anxiety in modern history of Assam. So the dialogue between All India Assam Students Union and Assam Gana Parishad and government started under Indira Gandhi government that came to power in 1980, but the accord was signed in 1985 under Rajiv Gandhi. What was the central issue in the accord was the foreigners issue, clause number 5, safeguards and economic development, clause 6 and 7. There were other issues from clauses 8 to 12 and section 8 called the restoration of normalcy from clause 13 to 14, 13 and 14. The accord led amendment that created categories of citizenship and created opportunities for the Hindu right to manipulate in order to move India towards the descent-based citizenship or sui sangaris form of citizenship. According to the new set of accord, the purposes of detection and deletion of foreigners from 1/1/1966 shall be the base year for the data, and all persons who came to Assam prior to 1966, January 1st of 1966, including those amongst them whose names appeared on the electoral rolls used in 1967 elections, shall be regularized. It further recognized the presence of foreigners under clause from 5 to 8, foreigners who came to Assam on and after March 25, 1971, certainly to be detected, deleted, and practical steps to be taken to expel them from India. In other words, who migrated to Assam prior to 1966 were accepted as citizens, and those who arrived between 1966 to 71 were removed from the electoral roll, so we wait for 10 years for the renewed application. Those who came post-1971 became illegal immigrants. This categorization gave a new twist to the debate in Constituent Assembly that was settled in favor of inclusive citizenship. Clearly, an attempt that was made in citizenship in 1955 to give the progressive solution to the citizenship by removing the religious dimension found a new life in these modifications into the Assam Accord. In a way, partition appeared to be a never-ending source for creating never-ending issues in the region, and citizenship debate found itself in the whirlpool forever. Two further amendments in 2004, one was the Citizenship Accord, and the other to the rules under the Act during the Bajpayee government that added or deepened the religious dimensions. The amendment to the Citizenship Act introduced religion-based exception by stating that if born on Indian soil, a person who had one parent who was an illegal migrant at the time of his birth would not be eligible for citizenship. Most illegal migrants from Bangladesh were Muslims, so it was understood at that time by the government that likely that this would lead to a lot of exclusion of people or who are suspected to be illegal immigrants. Illegal migrant issue has been an ideological cause for the Hindu right because it has the imaginary fear of India becoming overpopulated with Muslims at some point. 2014 parliamentary campaign, which was mainly run on the Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas, even during that particular campaign, Narendra Modi, when he went to the campaign to West Bengal, he did raise all the issues of illegal migrants. There is some truth in the claim by Amit Shah when he said in the parliament that this was part of the BJP's manifesto. In 2016, again in the run-up to the assembly in Assam, Bharatiya Janata Party had made an electoral promise to the state from illegal Bangladeshi migrants, and simultaneously promised to give Indian citizenship to all Bangladeshi Hindu migrants if it won the election. So to address the fears in Northeast, Home Minister Amit Shah announced that Manipur would be brought under inner permit because the state had witnessed unrest against the bill that was brought earlier. Other states such as Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland and Mizoram are exempted from CAB. Furthermore, areas under 6th Schedule of Constitution which deals with autonomous tribal dominated regions such as Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram are also exempted. I will just talk about politics of National Register of Citizens, and then we will close it, and then we will have a discussion on this. In the wake of the massive protests, both Prime Minister Modi and Home Minister Amit Shah have repeatedly explained that the CAA 2019's exclusion would not directly impact Muslims. The act, according to them, is meant to offer fair citizenship, not to snatch it from anyone. ये एक आर्गुमेंट बहुत जोर से आया है जिसमें प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी और अमित शाह मिनिस्टर दोनों क्लैरिफाई किए हैं कि ये जो एक्ट है ये सिटीजनशिप छीनने के लिए नहीं है, सिटीजनशिप देने के लिए. This is the explanation from the government side. Whereas the protesters or those who are opposed, they have argued that no, this is an attempt to apply religious criteria and therefore deny Muslims from future citizenship, those who are coming from the other side. So there is an attempt to discriminate a particular religious category, particularly Muslims in this case, and that has been the argument from the other side. The act, according to them, is meant to offer. So then we need to understand that what is this National Register of Citizens and why BJP is so keen to expand it to the rest part of India. The NRC is an official record of legal Indian. Again, as I said, that the BJP government was nowhere on the scene when the initial attempt was made to create NRC. It contains demographic information about individuals who are eligible as citizens of India as per the Citizenship Act of 1955. First prepared after 1951 census of India, it remained dormant till recently. It was in 2005 Dr. Manmohan Singh, then Prime Minister of India, chaired a meeting with the New Delhi government, based on Assam government on Assam Students' Union, in which it was decided to take steps towards updating the NRC in Assam. It was intended to meet the objective of Assam Accord of 1985 that the Congress Party's former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi had signed. It's also important to underline that Dr. Singh was a member of the upper house of Rajya Sabha from Assam, therefore took special interest in addressing the Assamese. However, an NGO called Assam Public Works filed a petition in the Supreme Court asking for updating NRC. In 2014, India's Supreme Court passed an order to update the NRC in all parts of Assam in accordance with the Citizenship Act of 1955 and Citizenship Rules of 2003. But the process began in 2015. The war continued with lots of ups and downs, but the final NRC was released on October 31st, in which 9 million failed to make it the final cut. Surprisingly, many of these left-out applicants were Hindus, which became a matter of concern for the BJP leadership or the Hindu right groups. Protests followed and the Home Minister declared that the NRC would be carried out again in Assam. On the watch of the Supreme Court of India, Assam served as a laboratory for a potentially dangerous experiment of exclusion citizens to NRC. The result of the NRC has shown that the undocumented nationals may be unfairly denied of their citizenship owing to lack of documents. It is a challenge in a poor society with massive illiteracy and often inflicted with many natural disasters such as floods, in which people often lose their belongings. There were strange cases of exclusion which further had demonstrated evidences of unprofessionalism of Indian bureaucracy. Among cases of exclusion included people like nephew of former Indian President Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad, even Syed Anwara Taimur, the only Home Minister of Assam ever had, and people who have served in Indian armed or border security forces for decades. But these strange exclusions or failure of bureaucracy of the NRC to maintain professionalism was not the reason that the BJP government or fueled their enthusiasm for the call for an international NRC. The exclusion of Hindus was the main reason, so the attempt has been made to explore ways how to accommodate those undocumented Hindus and at the same time continue to have NRC so that only undocumented Muslims should become its sole victims. This is apparent in the decision by the government to ask centers in Assam to release non-Muslim detainees who have been forced to seek shelter in the state before December 31st of 2014 with expired or without any valid documents, according to the Minister of Home, Nityananda Rai, of the present government. So undocumented Hindus could, on the basis of their religious identity, be reinstated as citizens through CAA. It is genuine but undocumented Indian nationals belong to Muslim faith who would be excluded with no recourse to the CAA. Therefore, the design is well calculated according to some scholars with respect to exclusion. Another important consequence of this exercise is that while the government seems to be determined to deport, but does not have any clue where to. Apparently, the earliest destination, a land seen as the major source of illegal migrants, is not on the board. Therefore, the plan to move these stranded human beings to detention centers causing large-scale human rights violations. According to a reply by the Minister of State of Home, Nityananda Rai, on July 2nd, 2019 to Indian Parliament, that the Ministry of Home Affairs were giving instruction to various governments since 2009 to establish detention centers to restrict movements of foreign nationals staying illegally so that they are physically available at all times for expeditious repatriations. जो डिटेंशन सेंटर होगा 2009 से ये रूल मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ होम अफेयर्स ने हर स्टेट को दिया था कि जहां पर डिटेंशन सेंटर बनाए जाएंगे और जो भी लोग इलीगल हैं हिंदुस्तान में उन सबको डिटेंशन सेंटर में रखा जाएगा. This instruction has been issued to the state time to time to various states and union territories. ये 2009 में इसको दिया गया था, 2012, 2012, 2014 और 2018 at all this time. The manual of model detention center is also circulated. Interestingly, I'll just close in another 5 minutes or so. Interestingly, Prime Minister Modi in December 2019 at a rally in Delhi said there are rumors about detention centers being sprayed by the Congress and urban Naxals are completely false. Muslims of the country are neither being sent to the detention center nor there is a detention center in India. This is a white lie, according to the Prime Minister. However, it is a fact that Assam has got 6 detention centers and 10 more.
मैडम अभी निकलेंगी इधर से या कब तक खड़ी होंगी इंतजार कर रही हैं.
statement has quite misleading. So one of the big debates that is taking place about this, what is the implication for the future of secularism in India, because India is also a country. As you all know that there was a famous judgment that came up called Kesavananda Bharati case. India. Mr. Sushil Kumar, please switch off your mic. Sushil Kumar, please switch off your mic. Unmute. Sushil Kumar, please. Dr. Sushil Kumar, please mute your mic. Sushil Kumar, please mute your mic. So there is this big debate that is going on whether this particular act is consistent with the India's claim of a secular constitution, which is not discriminatory from the point of view of religion or not. So I was mentioning about this Kesavananda Bharati case. It is in this case that the basic structure of Indian constitution, this whole judgment was made. And unfortunately, Kesavananda Bharati passed away yesterday. He was alive. He passed away yesterday. He's the one who had taken this case, and there was this 13-judge Supreme Court about what and what is not amendable. The basic structure of the Constitution is not amendable, and secularism is considered to be the basic structure of the Constitution. There are two arguments that is going on. One is that this particular Amendment Act, by identifying Muslim migrants of Muslim majority countries, has diluted or challenged or has moved out of the commitment to secularism. And the other argument that is going on by the government side is this, that it is inconceivable that Muslims in these countries could be discriminated because these are all Muslim countries. Therefore, there's no possibility of Muslims being discriminated in Pakistan or Bangladesh or Afghanistan. But the public debate is this: Islam, the religion, has got many sects, and there are various discriminations in the name, sectarian discriminations. So there is Shia-Sunni differences that causes lots of problems, and then there are Ahmadiyyas who also face a lot of discrimination from the Orthodox Sunni population. So therefore, within the Muslim community, there are discriminations. So this argument is going on in this part of it. And I would like to stop the discussions here, and then I can carry on the discussion over. So now those who want to ask the question, you can, mute the mic, and then we can discuss. I'm also giving you my...
Sir,
Yeah.
so everybody will ask a question in the comment box, and please pick top 5 questions. First
All
5
right.
questions.
Chat
Not top-
section. Chat section.
Yeah, chat section.
All
They'll
right.
ask in the chat section. They'll
Yeah.
we just pick first 5 questions.
Okay.
And if you have time, then you can take more than 5.
Yeah. Let us do like this. Let us take... Please frame your questions and send it in the chat section.
First question is there, sir.
Yeah, is this economically beneficial for the country? Well, I do not know. We are a poor country, all right? If you are living in a city like in Delhi, some of us who live, we know that we have thousands of people who live on the streets. They don't have homes to go. So, when you have poor people who are on streets, if you have gone to any major cities, whether Delhi or Lucknow or Hyderabad or Chennai or Bombay, you will come across thousands of homeless people. So in any developed country, you will come across that there are night shelters for all these poor people. Suppose you pull a rickshaw and you don't have place to go, you go and stay in the night shelter. You are a beggar, you don't have place to go, you go and live in a night shelter. In India, there are no night shelters. During extreme winter, suddenly there is always a debate in Delhi about night shelters, then disappears. On the one hand, you have the government, both the governments, UPA and the NDA, both of them are very enthusiastic to allocate thousands of crores to detention centers. So who are the people that this government is putting in detention centers? Officially, these are all illegal migrants. But the fact remains that these are the people who have their own life, right? They may be illegal, but they are working, they are doing their own things, they have a place to stay and all of that. So the government is not bothered about its own citizens who are homeless and for whom it requires night shelters, but is very keen to have detention centers without knowing where it wants to deport these people. Once you put these people in night shelters, obviously you are going to look after their food expenses, their accommodations, and all that about it, which is basically taxpayers' money are going to go for it. So I'm not too sure, what is the concept behind. You can make sense of it. Suppose that there are two things. One is that you have a clear idea that these are illegal people and they have from Bangladesh and Bangladesh has agreed and you wanted to hand over. This person will be there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks or 2 months. Then the person goes about it. Then you don't worry about it. So obviously it is not an economically wise decision, it appears to me. My own view is this about it. So that's where I would like to argue. Because in a country which is likely to face enormous amount of employment issues in the years to come, in the months to come. Even before pandemic, we had serious issues. It's very important for us to think through all these things, where we are investing our own money. Now, the question of Bhumiputra, somebody, Anup Sekhar has asked the question concerning Bhumiputra.
Yes, my question is on how strongly does the idea of the Bhumiputra conjure the current notion of a citizen apostle? Also, does the notion and exercise of tracing our roots to a particular geography and a select historical time to define insiders and outsiders have its limits?
Well, there are two very big questions that you ask. I'll give you, in my book, Political Future of Indian Movements, that is coming out from Simon's sister, I have a whole discussion on this, and I would like, when it comes out, those who have interest in this subject, you can Google it and you can find the book and all of that. My instant is this, that the idea is not Bhumiputra. Now the question is this: if you are going to go by the Bhumiputra account, there are a lot of Muslims who can probably claim that particular benefit. Say for instance that you are from somewhere south and your family migrated to Assam, say 100 years ago, and from Assam it went to Bangladesh, and you remain part of the Bhumiputra because your ancestors were, say, Malayali Muslims, and in course of time you have migrated to different places, marriages and all of that about it. Then you say about, well, I'm originally a Malayali Muslim, I have nothing to do all of that, so and go back. Is there a provision for that? Answer is no. But if you are a Hindu, then you can come back, because you would argue that you are facing persecution, so you would like to go back there. So that's where the partition debate becomes very important. What happened is this: the partition debate was never a complete one. Partition debate was essentially foiled by Muslims themselves. You have as many people who accepted Pakistan, as many people who decided not to accept Pakistan. Right? So the division was not solved. So you have a huge bulk of people. At the time of partition, Muslim population in India was roughly around 25% of Indian population. Today's India's Muslim population is roughly around 14.3 or 15%. So you have more than 50% of Indian Muslims choosing to stay back in India, right? So and partition was essentially an elite project, right? It was the landlords, it was the educated lawyers, it was the white professionals who supported the idea of a separate homeland. The poor rickshaw puller, the poor farmer Muslim who is living on both sides of the partner, a poor Hindu who is on that side, he had no idea what was going on. It is not that he was listening to all these speeches and sitting and reading what Mountbatten was planning and all of that. The poor man is busy in his own day-to-day life, whether he is a Hindu poor or a Muslim poor or a Sikh poor or this thing's about. So the partition was primarily an elite project. The politically ambitious, politically conscious, politically driven small number of people essentially trusted this decision on a large number of distance about it. Now one would like to ask, consider this, that there is a poor Muslim somewhere in Dhaka or Chittagong district who was not happy with this decision and wanted to, and he's originally from Hyderabad or he's originally from, say, Karnataka, and he would have liked to go back to Karnataka. But he had actually no means to go back to Karnataka, because if he lands up in Karnataka, what did he do with? So we never clearly had an idea. So partition is one of the most mismanaged incident of history that took place. Then that led to the violence, massive violence, and that violence has left enormous amount of bad memories on the people of this country. And so rape, violence, murder, kidnap, all of this stuff. There are a lot of things that have happened. And we never wanted to discuss. We thought that these issues will automatically disappear from the human imagination, from our imagination. That has not happened. So what has happened is this Hindu groups, Muslim groups and secular groups and various political groups have their own version of history through which they are trying to debate on this particular question. So as I understand, the so-called Bhumiputra idea of the kind that, say, German citizenship has it. In Germany, say, for instance, if you prove that you happen to be a German Jew and you are living in Russia or somewhere else in Brazil, but if you can show that ancestry, then you can be taken back as a German citizen. Where in India, I suppose, even Muslims have got a long history of thousands of years. If you show that you have nothing to do with any of this stuff and you like to go back, you can't show about it. So that's where the bias argument becomes very prominent. So there is an argument that since it was historically a Hindu land, so therefore only Hindus could be able to establish without doubt that this land belongs to them. But if you are a Muslim, you say, with a history of thousands of years, and say, imagine another situation. So there is a vast number of Muslims of India. They were originally Hindus, right? At some point of time, they have embraced religion or changed their religion, right? There are a lot of Buddhists in this country who are originally Hindus. Say Ambedkar was a Hindu, but accepted Buddhism. There are a vast number of Ambedkarites nowadays who are becoming Buddhists. So there are a lot of Muslims, and there is no recorded history of most Muslims who could claim that under what circumstances their family has accepted Islam. So a person like me, for instance, do I look like genetically somebody coming from Middle East? Genetic structure is the most important structure through which you justify your things about. So there are a lot of Muslims who are genetically Indians, but their family at some point of time had accepted religion, right? So historically, these people, if you go with the Bhumiputra definition, they could say, well, at the 13th century, my family was a Hindu, right? And then it accepted Islam at some point of time. think of a man, Muhammad Ali Jinnah's family was a Hindu. It is a fact. Saifuddin Kichlu, the famous lawyer against whose arrest the protest took place in Jallianwala Bagh, and then the General Dyer. Saifuddin Kichlu's family was a Hindu family. It's a Kashmiri Pandit family. Just 2 generations ago, they had converted to Islam, but he was a Muslim, right? So you have lot of facts like this. Some families have recorded informations. Say, for instance, all these Patels in Gujarat, the Congress politician Ahmed Patel and all of this, they were all Patels. The family accepted Islam, and then the part of the Patel thing they have kept, the part of the Islamic thing they have kept in it. And you will come across a lot of names like that, where you have an obvious evidence that these were people who came from Hindu ancestry. Now, how would you argue? Somebody says, well, I am not Hindu, but my great-great-great-great-grandfather 13 generations ago was a Hindu. Right? So, give me the citizenship, I want to go back to it. And now I am in Afghanistan, or now I am in Chittagong, or now I am in Dhaka. I want to go back. I don't like this country. I don't feel safe for XYZ reason. I am an Ahmadiyya, or I am a Shia, or I don't practice any religion. I am an atheist, and all these fundamentalists are killing me. So I don't want to go back to become Hindu, but my ancestor was a Hindu. So these are all big questions in a country like ours, which has such a deep history. And so, where will people go? There is a question by Sabir Tahini. Where will people go if they are not registered in the NRC? So at this point of time, they will stay in the detention center. You see.
Hello, sir.
Yeah. At this point of time, there is no resolution for it, but they can only go to the detention. If you have a question, please ask that question now.
Sir, hello, sir. I have a question.
Yeah. Just ask. Anirudh, please ask the question to the chat. Just type in the chat section.
Actually, my question is little big, so I thought that I एक बार कॉल कर लेता हूँ, एक बार बात कर लेता हूँ तो अच्छा।
हाँ, बोलो।
हाँ सर, मैं वेस्ट बंगाल से हूँ और मेरे जो रिलेटिव्स हैं, बहुत सारे रिलेटिव्स अभी भी बांग्लादेश में हैं। हाँ, बांग्लादेश में जो कंडीशन है जो हिंदू माइनॉरिटी का, वहाँ पर वो अच्छे से रह नहीं पा रहे हैं। जब उनसे फोन पे बातचीत होती है, वो बोलते हैं कि यहाँ पर रहने के लायक नहीं है कंडीशन। हाँ, तो और डेमोग्राफी भी अगर देखे तो 71 के बाद से लगातार हिंदू जो है वहाँ पर घट रहे हैं उनके संख्या। तो एनआरसी के अगर एनआरसी को छोड़ दिया जाए तो कैसे उनका प्रोटेक्शन हम कर सकते हैं इंडिया में बैठकर?
Well, you see, there are 2 laws. There is one law that people are talking about. It's called refugee law. जैसा आपका फॉरेन कंट्रीज में आप जाएंगे, हिंदुस्तान में आपका तमिल का मूवमेंट हुआ श्रीलंका में, वहाँ पर बहुत सारे तमिल को गवर्नमेंट भी टारगेट किया है ना, क्योंकि उन लोग सेपरेट कंट्री बनाना चाहते थे वगैरह वगैरह। जैसे फॉर इंस्टेंस बहाई करके एक रिलीजन है ईरान में, और ईरान गवर्नमेंट उनको टारगेट करता है उस रिलीजन के लोगों को। पाकिस्तान में अहमदियस को टारगेट करता है। तो वहाँ पर बहुत सारे लोग बाहर जाते हैं जहाँ पर उन लोग अजाइलम सीख करते हैं। वो कहते हैं कि रिफ्यूजी लॉ बनता है, और कहते हैं कि हम लोग वहाँ पर पॉलिटिकली परसिक्यूटेड होते हैं, तो हमको आप लोग सहारा दीजिए। So India could have, the whole problem is that India could have designed such a refugee policy as early as 1965, जबकि वॉर के टाइम में बहुत लोग आए थे इधर, है ना। तो उस वक्त इंडिया could have designed a refugee. The whole problem is this, that there are 2 things. One is that either we will have a rule of law which says that all Indians will live in India and Indians will not go anywhere, right? But as you know, a lot of well-educated Indians are standing in front of the embassy of Pakistan, in front of America, England, Canada, and desperate to become citizens of America, Canada, and Britain. And we are all very proud of it. There has been a massive movement that goes on in our society, in our world, regardless of of all these issues of partition and anything that we are talking about. So to answer your question is this: the most effective way is to have anybody who wants to take refuge in our country for genuine reasons. And the unfortunate fact is this: the past governments never paid attention to all these problems. There are a lot of victims of, both in Pakistan, in Bangladesh and in Afghanistan. After Taliban came, there are a lot of Muslims who became victims of Taliban's violence. Many of them came and lived in various parts of Pakistan, in madrasas and all of that stuff. So therefore, none of these governments considered it a matter of priority. So there are people for thousands and for 10 years, 20 years, 25 years are living in this country without having any documents, without having any knowledge how to have documents. And these are not the people who have got jobs or who are relatives of some big industrialists and factories. So there has been a lot of mistakes and indifference by various governments who have ignored this issue, as a result of which we are confronting a massive problem in front of us. And of course, there are political parties who are taking advantage of this, because such a situation does, according to them, benefit politically. So they are playing their own cards in this about it. So there are genuine problems of asylum both in Pakistan and in Afghanistan, in Bangladesh, where Hindu minorities, Sikh minorities, Jain minorities, Buddhist minorities, and also various sects of Muslims, the Ahmadiyyas particularly, are facing lots of problems over there. And, not long ago, they were part of our own history. Only 70 years ago, they were part of our history. It is possible a particular family from Bhopal to Lahore or Bhopal to Chittagong for XYZ reason about it. So our history did not start in 1947, 15th of August. Our history did not start in 1985 and all of that about it. The fact that a lot of these problems are not addressed on time, so we are facing this problem in a big way. And there has been a tremendous amount of politicization of it. As a result of which, largely it is the poor people, it is the poor Hindu, it is the poor Muslim who is facing this problem in a big way. Those who are rich, they will migrate to America or England or some other country. They are not interested to come to India to work as a domestic help in Noida. Who comes and works as a domestic help and lives in Noida? It is the poorest of the poor who comes and does that. The rich man has nothing to do with it. He would migrate to some other country.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Sir, one question is mine. What will be the long-lasting impact of CA on our society?
Long-lasting, my own understanding is that it is not the CAA that is going to create a lot of problem for India. What is going to create problem for India is the NRC. CAA still could be managed in the sense that those Muslims from Pakistan or Afghanistan who can't come to India, they would probably go elsewhere about it. Because the whole problem, there are many Muslim countries. The problem with the Muslim countries are that they are basically fighting with each other. They are killing their own people about it. So it is not that the Muslim people cannot go to some other country, but the politics of Muslim nations are also very violent and dangerous. So as a result of which, the options are very limited for a lot of these people. So the problem comes with this whole detention center, dragging people who are having their own life and not knowing where to send them. You want to deport, but there should be a destination of deportation. You want to send them to somewhere. So it does not make any sense. Say somebody is working as a tea vendor, in a small town. He has a tea shop, and you say, well, you are an illegal migrant. So now you come and stay in the detention center. And the person is in the detention center for 10 years. Now you are spending money for this guy in a country where you need money to do a lot of other things. It should be obvious in the pandemic that we don't have enough money to help our own working class people. Many of them paid huge price. Yeah.
हेलो सर.
या
हाँ सर, मुझे एक जानना था, क्या एनआरसी से का इफेक्ट SC ST के ऊपर हो सकता है, और हो सकता है तो क्या हो सकता है?
देखो, ये SC ST इस तरीके से नहीं देख रहे हैं. बात ये होता है कि गरीब आदमी जो होता है उसके ऊपर में पड़ेगा. ज़्यादातर SC ST लोग भी बहुत गरीब आदमी होते हैं. बात NRC की जो आती है कि वो डॉक्यूमेंट्स के ऊपर में आ जाता है कि बॉस आपके पास डॉक्यूमेंट्स है या नहीं है ना. तो ज़्यादातर लोग हिंदुस्तान में डॉक्यूमेंट्स नहीं होता है या डॉक्यूमेंट्स सही नहीं होता है ना. डॉक्यूमेंट्स निकालना इतना इजी नहीं होता है. लोग कहते हैं कि अरे सब ऑनलाइन अप्लाई कर दो. अरे कौन गरीब आदमी के पास इतना नॉलेज है ऑनलाइन कहीं पे अप्लाई करेगा एग्जाम.
ज़्यादातर SC और ST के उनके पास कोई डॉक्यूमेंट होता ही नहीं.
हाँ, वही मैं बोल रहा हूँ. तो ज़्यादातर गरीब लोगों के पास डॉक्यूमेंट होता ही नहीं. तो इसीलिए जो महुआ मित्र ने बोला कि जिस कंट्री में तुम्हारे मिनिस्टर लोग अपना सर्टिफिकेट नहीं दिखा पा रहे हैं और वहाँ पे तुम अब गरीब आदमी को बोल रहे हो कि तुम सारा डॉक्यूमेंट लाओ. तुम्हारा अब्बा कहाँ पे रहता था उसका ज़मीन का डॉक्यूमेंट लाओ. तुम्हारा दादा कहाँ पे रहता था उसका डॉक्यूमेंट लेकर आओ. तो ये बड़ा मसला है. ये सबसे बड़ा मसला है.
Sir, whether India has any coherent refugee policy?
Well, India does not have, we have a refugee policy, but it is not particularly very efficient refugee policy. जब हमारे पास refugee policy अच्छा होता तो the present CAA Act addresses people who have come to India and have lived in India for 5 years to 2014. तो 2014 तक के लोगों को कैसे refugee में स्टेटस नहीं दे सकता. अब देखो, कुछ केसेस स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड है. कोई आदमी पाकिस्तान से आया, यहाँ पे क्या होता है कि हमारे ब्यूरोक्रेसी में एक सस्पिशन होता है कि कभी पता नहीं वो कोई आके पाकिस्तान का स्पाई होगा, ये होगा, वो होगा. इस तरीके से सवाल उठता है, उठाकर उन लोगों को देते नहीं. तो द क्वेश्चन इज दिस, वी डू नॉट हैव नाइदर इफेक्टिव refugee policy, nor have we got an effective education policy, nor have we got an effective health policy, nor have we just have an effective corruption policy. Other than that, we don't have many effective policies. So that is the tragedy of our country, because our political parties are hijacked by a lot of people who have different agendas other than forming good policies for the people of India.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
I have just trying to share with you only, not a question. So I have been working for NRC last 2 years as staff.
Achha.
And over Dr. Viprasad Kusumatari also a participant in our program here. So, actually, sir, the protest against I and NRC, especially inside Assam and outside Assam, is totally different. Outside Assam, the protest was going on because the Muslims were excluded from CA. That means if Muslim will be included, then this act will be okay. But inside that, the spirit of the protest against CA is totally different, because this in Assam, the protest is against, going on against CA because the CA is against Assam method, not the method of Hindu Muslim here in Assam.
Yes.
Going against because that post-71, 1971,
I got your point.
you are civil to Muslim.
Yeah. I got your point. So that is the debate that is going on about it, and I read out from my lecture about that one.
Yes.
So Assamese, that's why Praful Mahant was opposed to it because of that. Assamese identity, the way it was argued by the Assam Gana Parishad and in Assam Accord, which is a very secular identity. That's more an ethnic identity based on periods and history, not Hindu-Muslim. Whereas the CA is looked at it from the point of view of Hindu-Muslim. That's where the difference is.
Finally, it is not a matter of Hindu-Muslim inside Assam, but outside Assam. It has
My
to
own view, according to there is a question by Mr. Sonali Gaikwad whether it violates secularism of India or not. Yes, it does violate secularism of India the way I understand it. For the simple reason is secularism is that any policy has to be religious neutral. The moment you begin to bring up a particular religion, whether it is Hindus or Muslims or Sikh or this and that, so that obviously violates secularism. That means that you are privileging certain religions against another religion. The argument that the government has given is this, that in Islamic Republic, how could Muslims be discriminated? But then Muslims are of different kinds. There are Shias, there are Sunnis, there are Ahmadiyas, and they also have their own issues within them about it. So, the argument that just because a country announces officially itself as an Islamic Republic, all Muslims are happy and love each other is not a reality. Just because that we have officially declared ourselves a secular country, that does not mean that there are no communalism or discrimination that does not exist in our country, or there is no violence against people in the name of religion is not taking place in our country. And in our own country, we know that officially we are a secular country, but people kill each other in the name of religion, in the name of caste, in the name of language. We know what happens in Bombay. If you are a Bihari, you are beaten up and thrown out from Bombay because you happen to be a Bhaiya from Uttar Pradesh or from this about. We have Hindu-Muslim riots in this country. We have caste violence in this country. But officially we are a secular country. So there is a difference between what is a political reality on the ground and what a document shows. How many Indians have got or have seen even the Indian Constitution? We are educated people, we have seen Indian Constitution. But if you go around in your own neighborhood and ask people, have you seen Indian Constitution? How many would say yes? And how many of them have understood or read Constitution? How many of them, in fact, follow Constitution? So we are a very poor country. Our Constitution is in one place. Our society is in another place of history. It is not easy to bring them together. So therefore, I would argue that it does violate secularism in India. Now, there is somebody who has argued that is NRC going to reduce migration? Well, NRC has nothing to do with the migration. Migration takes place because of the political conditions in other countries. If Bangladesh would become a secular, if their leadership would have remained secular, then a lot of Hindus would not have migrated from Bangladesh to India. As I said, it is not the rich Hindus who would like to come. Rich Hindus go to America, England and all of this. It is the poor Hindu, poor rickshaw puller, poor peasant, poor this, who is going to migrate to India? Because through land he will migrate to India. So NRC has nothing to do with the migration as such. Somebody has asked that Delhi had the 35% population in 1941 census, now it is 5%. Well, many people migrated to Pakistan. Delhi, there was a significant migration. That is the reason why the population has come down. What will be the lasting impact? Dr. Ruchi Agarwal has asked, what is the lasting impact of CAA for us? Well, it is going to polarize, partly because of the fact that there is a perception among Muslims that the government is targeting Muslim community. And given that a lot of things has happened, say Ayodhya judgment, the lynching and all of these things are happening, the ban of beating and all of that things happening. So there is a genuine fear among the Muslims in India that there are a lot of steps that have been being taken in this country that are anti-Muslim in nature, and the government is going against the Muslim community. So suspicion runs very deep among Muslims of all classes, not just educated and uneducated and all of that. So clearly CAA is going to be very, very polarizing one in Indian society. महेश कुमार त्रिपाठी, CAA से किसी भारतीय पर कोई प्रभाव नहीं पड़ेगा. Yeah, the problem is not the CAA so much. The problem is the connection between the CAA and the NRC. NRC का ऊपर में, so that is the problem. It is not affecting any Indians. But once you have NRC, NRC asks that you show that you happen to be an Indian. For that you have to show the documents. So that's where the problem is about it.
सर मेरा एक सवाल है, मैं आपसे कर सकता हूँ?
हाँ.
सर मुझे एनआरसी, एमपीआर और सीए के ताल्लुक से एक सवाल भी है, उसको समझना भी है सर।
जी।
सवाल ये है कि सर इसका असर यहाँ की तमाम आप कर रहा है, खासकर एनआरसी का तमाम आबादी पर पड़ रहा है, चाहे वो हिंदू हो या मुसलमान हो, चाहे वो छोटे तबके को या बड़े तबके को। लेकिन देख रहा हूँ कि पूरे एक खास कम्युनिटी का कमजोर तबका इसके खिलाफ प्रोटेस्ट कर रहा है। इंटेलेक्चुअल और पढ़ा लिखा तबका इसके मंजर और पस मंजर में बहुत कम नजर आता है। मेरा सवाल ये पैदा होता है सर, क्या ये सारे लोग मिलकर अगर इसके खिलाफ एहतजाज करें तो क्या इस बिल में तब्दीली आ सकती है या इसका कोई बेहतर हल निकल सकता है?
वेल मैं मेरा अपना व्यू दे सकता हूँ, क्योंकि मेरा कोई ताल्लुकात नहीं है होम मिनिस्टर साहब के साथ।
मुझे नहीं, मेरा सवाल है इसके अंदर इंटेलेक्चुअल तबका, पढ़ा लिखा तबका क्यों नहीं सामने में आ रहे हैं, जैसे आम लोग आ रहे हैं?
नहीं, पढ़े लिखे लोग आ रहे हैं, ऐसी बात नहीं है। हम लोग भी आर्टिकल लिखते रहते हैं, बस हमको टीवी नहीं दिखाता है। आपको पता होगा कि हिंदुस्तान में टेलीविजन की अभी ये आदत ऐसी हो गई है कि वो बस एक दो आदमी को पकड़ के बैठे रहते हैं और उन्हीं लोगों को जबरदस्त एक्सपर्ट बना लेते हैं। अब देखो मैंने इतने सारे नाम बताया, संजीव बरुआ साहब, हजारिया साहब, ये बहुत सारी किताबें लिखी हैं 40-50 साल से, अच्छी किताबें लिखी हैं। उनको आप कभी इंडियन टेलीविजन में नहीं देखेंगे डिबेट करते हुए। जो पढ़ा लिखा आदमी है उनको इंडियन टेलीविजन में कभी पढ़ा लिखा डिबेट करते हुए नहीं देखेंगे। तो ये सारी बात होती है। तो इंटेलेक्चुअल्स वगैरह सब लोग आ रहे हैं धीरे धीरे, तो ऐसी बात नहीं है कि लोग पार्टिसिपेट नहीं कर रहे हैं।
सबसे बड़ी बात ये है कि इसको हिंदू और मुस्लिम मसला बना दिया,
बनाया नहीं गया है। ये हिंदू मुसलमान का सवाल है, ऐसी बात नहीं है कि आप जब कहेंगे कि मुसलमान लोगों को अलाउ मत करो तो मुसलमान का सवाल हो ही गया वहाँ पर। तो ऐसी बात नहीं है कि मुसलमान का सवाल नहीं है, इसको हिंदू मुसलमान सवाल बनाया गया है। लेकिन बात ये होता है कि दूसरा सवाल आप कुछ पूछ रहे थे कि क्या इसमें कुछ तब्दीली आएगी। जहाँ तक इस गवर्नमेंट का सवाल है, so far as the BJP is concerned, I don't think BJP is going to pay attention to the protest. BJP गवर्नमेंट में तो कोई तब्दीली नहीं आएगी। लेकिन ये CAA तो अभी सुप्रीम कोर्ट के पास में है। जब सुप्रीम कोर्ट क्या जजमेंट देता है उसके ऊपर डिपेंड करता है। मेरा जहाँ तक अंडरस्टैंडिंग है सुप्रीम कोर्ट तो गवर्नमेंट के फेवर में जजमेंट दे देगा, ज़्यादातर गवर्नमेंट के फेवर में जजमेंट देता है। तो इसलिए तो वहाँ पे कोई उतना गुंजाइश नहीं है। लेकिन गवर्नमेंट जो आएगी तो वो चेंज कर सकती है, लेकिन दूसरी गवर्नमेंट कौन आएगी उसके बारे में भी अभी कोई ठिकाना नहीं। तो ये एक बहुत बड़ा इशू बनकर रह जाएगा, क्योंकि बीजेपी के लिए एक बहुत बड़ा क्या हो सकता है कि एनआरसी को कुछ देर तक इन लोग डेफर कर सकते हैं। एनआरसी जो लोग कहते थे कि अभी अभी लाना है, सब जगह लाना है, ये जो चिल्लाते थे पार्लियामेंट के अंदर में, ये प्रोटेस्ट के वजह से, क्योंकि बहुत सारे जो रीजनल गवर्नमेंट जो इनको राज्यसभा में सपोर्ट किया, जैसा बीजू जनता दल उड़ीसा का है उस राज्यसभा में सपोर्ट किया, उनको लोगों ने अप्लाई किया, वो सारे लोग एनआरसी के खिलाफ में हैं। जो उन लोग के लिए ब्यूरोक्रेटिक प्रॉब्लम बहुत बड़ा हो जाएगा, एप्लीकेशन करते रहेंगे। इसके लिए बहुत सारे रीजनल गवर्नमेंट जो हैं वो इनको अपोज करेंगे, और उस वजह से एनआरसी जो इन लोग कहते थे कि अभी अभी लाना है वो नहीं होगा, एनआरसी डेफर हो सकता है। लेकिन सीएए में कोई तब्दीली होने का मैं कोई गुंजाइश नहीं देख रहा। ये मेरा अंडरस्टैंडिंग है। कोई सवाल पूछे?
सर एक सवाल ये था।
हाँ।
दुनिया के अधिकांश देश अपनी शिक्षा व्यवस्था, आर्थिक स्थिति सुधारने में लगे, जबकि हमारी केंद्रीय सरकार है, राज्य सरकार है, कुछ न्यूज चैनल हिंदू मुस्लिम एनआरसी सीएए मामले में उलझा देते हैं। तो क्या सरकार की नजर में आवाम है या ये केंद्रीय सरकार, राज्य सरकार या न्यूज चैनल हमें बेवकूफ बनाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं?
देखिए बात ये होता है कि हिंदुस्तान के डेमोक्रेसी में जो होता है, हर डेमोक्रेसी, अमेरिका में न्यूज चैनल है, कई लोग ट्रंप को सपोर्ट करते हैं, कई लोग ट्रंप को अपोज करते हैं, ऐसी बात। वहाँ पर मीडिया थोड़ा बहुत इंडिपेंडेंट है, इंग्लैंड में मीडिया। हमारे मीडिया लोगों के साथ ये मसला ये है कि ज़्यादातर हम लोगों के पास इनकम नहीं होता, उनके अखबार बहुत कम बिक्री होते हैं और काफ़ी बहुत कम होते हैं। इन लोग का जो ज़्यादातर बिजनेस होता है वो एडवर्टाइजमेंट के पैसे से आता है, बड़े बड़े एडवर्टाइजमेंट लेते हैं। इसीलिए इतनी बड़ी एडवर्टाइजमेंट, जयंती पर एडवर्टाइजमेंट आ गई, उसकी सरकार में आ गई, इसका प्रोग्राम हो रहा है, इनाग्रेशन हो रहा है, उसकी आ गई। तो सारे पैसे आते हैं, तो इन लोग पैसे के लिए डिपेंड है, और जो पैसा देता है वो चाहता है कि तुम हमको सपोर्ट करो, तो थोड़ी पैसा देगा कि तुम हमको गाली दो करके, नहीं देगा ना। आप कभी किसी को देंगे पैसे कि भाई पैसा लो फिर मुझे गाली दो, खड़े होकर नहीं दोगे। सिचुएशन है। तो हमारे जो सबसे बड़ा मौसम है, बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है, वो हमारा फाउंडेशनल प्रॉब्लम है कि हमारे पास इंडिपेंडेंट मीडिया बन नहीं पाया। तो जो लोग अभी सरकार को सपोर्ट करते हैं, पहले सरकार चला गया, फिर इन लोग सब किसी को छोड़ के जाके दूसरा सरकार सपोर्ट करना शुरू कर दिया। इन्हीं लोग को देखोगे, ये अपने गोस्वामी साहब जाकर दूसरे सरकार को, मोदी साहब को गाली देते। भाई मोदी साहब हार गए, कोई दूसरा राहुल गांधी आ गया, कोई दूसरा बंदा आ गया, तो अर्नब गोस्वामी फिर उनके साथ जाके पहुंच जाएंगे। तो ये इनका अपना जिंदगी का सवाल है, तो ये रोजी रोटी का सवाल है। उस चक्कर में इन लोग क्यों जिधर से रोजी रोटी मिला उधर पहुंचे, और उसमें हमारा मीडिया फंस गया। तो मीडिया को कैसे से निकालें, ये चक्कर होता है। ये एक बहुत बड़ी बात हुई है। तो इंडियन डेमोक्रेसी को, तो वो हमारा जो दूसरी बात रही, हमारा डेमोक्रेटिक पॉलिटिक्स में पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज को बगैर डेमोक्रेटिक पॉलिटिक्स हम चला नहीं सकते। हमारा जितना सारा पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज है वो सारा डायनास्टिक हुए, हर जगह बाप बेटा चचा भतीजा बैठे हुए हैं। अब देखो उस पार्टी में सारा लोग इंडियन डेमोक्रेसी के बारे में बात करते हैं, लेकिन कोई अपने पार्टी के अंदर में डेमोक्रेसी लाना नहीं चाहता। हिंदुस्तान में जो इतना बड़ा पॉलिटिकल पार्टी कांग्रेस पार्टी है, उसमें आप देखो 23 आदमी दस्तखत है, क्या है उसमें, उन लोग भी इलेक्शन करना नहीं चाहते। तो ये सारा चक्कर है। तो हमारा जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन असेंबली में जो डिस्कशन चला था कि हम लोग एक लिबरल डेमोक्रेसी बनाएंगे, उसमें पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज क्या होना चाहिए। अब जो पॉलिटिकल पार्टी अपना डेमोक्रेसी नहीं रख रहा है, वो आके इलेक्शन कमीशन में बोलता है कि इंडिया में डेमोक्रेसी होना चाहिए। तो हमारे इलेक्शन कमीशन उसको पूछना चाहिए, बस तुम अपने पार्टी में डेमोक्रेसी नहीं रखी, अब तुम हमको क्यों पूछ रहे हो कि डेमोक्रेसी करो। तुम्हारा क्या कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट है, कितने बार इलेक्शन करवाए, आप खुद ही रखो के आए या नहीं आए, हो गया। तो हमारा जो सबसे बड़ा गलती हुआ हमारा हम लोग कहते हैं कि हमारे फादर्स को बहुत काम चला सके, वो चीज हम लोग नहीं देखी, अब किसी को बचा सके। और सारे लोग इसलिए जो बेटा भतीजा बैठे हुए हैं, वो इसलिए बैठे हुए हैं कि लोग सब काफी गलत तरीके से पैसा वैसा कमाया, दौलत बनाया। अभी भी अखिलेश यादव वैसे जिंदगी जीते हैं जैसा वो चीफ के टाइम में थे। अभी भी देखो 10 गाड़ी बने हुए हैं, ये है। हम लोग भी बहुत नौकरी करते हैं, हमारे पास एक गाड़ी मिलती है, हालत बुरा जाता है ना। तो इन लोग सब अपने ऐस है, अपना ऐस है, उसमें ऐस कर रहे हैं, उसमें तो अपनी दौलत को बचाने के चक्कर में लोग बैठे हुए हैं। तो ये सारी लोगों के साथ ये कहानी है। तो उन लोगों को बीजेपी की तरह सरकार भी काबू में लाने के लिए इजी है कि सबके पास ईडी भेज देता है। हमारे पास ईडी भेजेगा तो क्या मिलेगा, कुछ नहीं मिलेगा। उसको 2-4 किताब मिलेंगे हमारे घर से, तो उसमें कुछ मिलेगा नहीं। उनके पास जाएंगे तो बहुत सारी चीजें मिलेंगे, तो वो सारे चीजों को खामोश कर दिया गया है। तो जितने सारे अपोजिशन पार्टीज हैं वो सारे लोग खामोश बैठे हुए हैं, इसीलिए सब लोग हाथ उठाते रहते हैं दिल में जाकर। अब देखो पंजाब का जो पार्टी है आपका अकाली दल, उसने बोल रहा है नहीं ये गलत हो रहा है, पब्लिकली बोल रहा है बाहर में, लेकिन अंदर में जाकर हाथ उठा रहा है। तो इस तरीके का साल है। तो होल प्रॉब्लम इज दिस दैट आवर डेमोक्रेसी हैज टेकन ए रॉन्ग टर्न बिकॉज the institutions of power through which democratic decisions are supposed to be made have been taken over by wrong kind of people, है ना। हम लोग सब इतना घबराए हुए हैं कि हम लोग नहीं चाहते कि हम लोग जो एजुकेटेड आदमी, हम लोग मास्टर बन के 1-2 लाख रुपए तनख्वाह बनाने के लिए तैयार हैं, लेकिन कहीं इलेक्शन लड़ना, ये लोगों से मिलना, ये सब करना, वो सबसे डरते हैं कि बहुत इतना झंझट में फंसेगा। तो वहाँ पर दूसरे लोग पहुँच जाते हैं। So our democracy has taken a wrong turn because India there are a lot of good people in our country. There are a lot of well-educated people in our country. There are a lot of enlightened people in our country, but they are not in the positions of power. There are no opportunities to which they can go to the positions of power. As a result of which, the power centers are taken over by people who have no understanding of democracy, who have no respect for democracy, who have no appreciation of people's cause. As a result of which, we are paying the price. तो ये चक्कर है।
Thank you, sir.
हेलो सर। हेलो
यस संतोष सर।
हाँ जी सर, नमस्ते सर। मैं आपकी बातें बड़ी ध्यान से सुन रहा था, सारे उत्तर भी आपने सुना। जो आपने अभी लास्ट में अंत में जो आपने सब कुछ बताया वह सुनकर बड़ी खुशी हुई कि हकीकत वही है, चाहे पक्ष हो या विपक्ष हो, चाहे आज की बात हो चाहे पहले की बात हो, चाहे हमारी एजुकेशन पॉलिसी की बात हो, चाहे वो हमारे रिफ्यूजी पॉलिसी की बात हो, चाहे जिस पॉलिसी की, किसी ने कोई बढ़िया काम नहीं किया है। और जो ये वोट बैंक की राजनीति है सर, उसी की वजह से सब है। हेलो,
हाँ बोलो बोलो, सुन रहा हूँ
सर, जारी है सर। ये सब केवल वो चाहे ये है चाहे वो आए, किसी के जहन में ये नहीं है कि जो हमारी मूलभूत चीजें हैं उनमें सुधार किया जाए। अगर ऐसा होता तो यह आज हमारे 70 से ऊपर साल हो गए, आज हम सर की तरफ होते हैं, लेकिन ऐसा कुछ नहीं है। कुल मिलाकर के वोट की ही राजनीति है। और अभी जो इमरान भाई ने कहा था, बहुत बड़ी बात कहा कि वो हमको बेवकूफ बनाते हैं या हम बनते हैं। जब यही नहीं तय हो पा रहा है तो हम लोग बाकी हम क्या कर सकते हैं। तो मोस्टली सर लास्ट में जो आपने बताया कंक्लूजन वही है। और भारत में जो आपने कहा बुद्धिजीवी वर्ग, यह वास्तव में चिंता का विषय है आज कि हम लोग कहाँ जा रहे हैं। अगर वास्तव में सही कुछ नहीं हुआ तो जो हमारी अच्छाइयाँ हैं, भारत की बहुत सारी अच्छाइयाँ भी आपने बताया, वो अच्छाइयाँ माने नहीं रखेंगी, फिर कोई मतलब नहीं रह जाएगा। और जो देश हैं और भारत है, तो असली तो विचार पर इस पर होना चाहिए। और ये कैसे सुधार होगा इसके बारे में अगर आप कुछ बताते तो जरा बड़ा अच्छा होता है।
नहीं, बात तो सीधी सी बात है। एक मसला ये है जो सबसे बड़ा मुद्दा है। अब देखो, आप इंग्लैंड में हो, वहाँ पर कोई भी प्रोफेसर वो इलेक्शन लड़ सकता है ना। हमारे यहाँ पर कोई प्रोफेसर इलेक्शन लड़ नहीं सकता क्योंकि इलेक्शन इतना एक्सपेंसिव हो गया है। आपका हमारा कंट्री जो है वो यूरोप की तरह एक कॉन्टिनेंट है। हम लोग थोड़े कोई जापान फ्रांस की तरह हैं। अब एक मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट के लिए 15 लाख आदमी आपके हैं जिसको आप रिप्रेजेंट करेंगे, है ना। अब 15 लाख आदमी को आप रिप्रेजेंट कर नहीं सकते, बात आपकी और मेरी है ना। 20 लाख 25 लाख एक सिटीजन से आप ज्यादा से ज्यादा 2 लाख आदमी को रिप्रेजेंट कर सकते हैं या 1 लाख आदमी को रिप्रेजेंट कर सकते हैं। तो सबसे अच्छा सुधार जो मेरे सोच में है वो है कि आप अपने कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी का नंबर को बढ़ाओ। 1 लाख से ज्यादा कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी, जब 1 लाख का कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी आपका पार्लियामेंटरी कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी बना तो उसको एक आदमी स्कूटर पकड़ के घूम के कैंपेन कर सकता है, जीत सकता है ना। जब आप जब सही मुद्दा उठा सकते हैं, लोग जान सकते हैं, तो तब अच्छे आदमी पार्लियामेंट में आएंगे। बहुत सारे ऐसा हो सकता है कि इंडिपेंडेंट आदमी भी आ सकते हैं।
बिल्कुल,
क्योंकि आप 5 लाख रुपए का खर्चा करके इलेक्शन जीत के 5 लाख आदमी तो इंतजाम कर सकता है। जब आप 5 करोड़ हो जाता है तो आदमी
संभव नहीं है।
तो वहाँ पर फिर क्या होता है कि बहुत सारे, आपको ये तो सबको पता है कि बहुत सारे पार्टीज में लोग पैसे लेके टिकट लेते हैं, करोड़ों रुपया देते हैं और टिकट आता है। तो उसमें क्या होता है, जो इन्वेस्ट करता है वो फिर उसको उठाने का कोशिश करता है।
बिल्कुल।
तो ये धंधा चल रहा है, ब्लैक मार्केट चल रहा है अंदर से। तो ये सुधार जो है कि हमारा जो पार्लियामेंट है वो सारा डिलिमिटेशन होना चाहिए, एक फिक्स्ड पॉपुलेशन हो जाना चाहिए जिसको रिप्रेजेंट करो। ऐसा नहीं है कि ये सारा कॉन्स्टिट्यूंसी हो गया, है ना। तो 1 लाख या 1.5 लाख आप ठीक कर लीजिए कि 1.5 लाख पॉपुलेशन में एक पार्लियामेंट मेंबर होगा और जो अंदर है वो वहाँ पर जाकर कोई भी पार्टी से लड़ सकता है। मैं सोचता हूँ वहां आने से लोग बेजार हैं, हिंदुस्तान में लोग बेजार हैं। आप एक देखो 1950 से लेके अब तक आपके पास एक भी सरकार नहीं बना जो कि आपके पास सही में मेजोरिटी 50% से ज्यादा वोट लिया हो। हर गांव में लोग कहते हैं, जो लोग मोदी को नफरत करते हैं या अपोज करते हैं, वो कहते हैं अरे मोदी तो 35% वोट लाया या 35, अरे उसके पहले भी जो आया था वो उससे कम लाया था वोट। बात होता है नेहरू साहब, हाँ, तो बात ये होता है कि हमारा कभी मेजोरिटी जो नहीं, मेजोरिटी रूल हुआ ही नहीं है हमारे कंट्री में,
नहीं हुआ,
तो माइनॉरिटी रूल ही चल रहा है ना। वो सीट ज्यादा लाता है इसलिए वो सरकार चलाती है, लेकिन हकीकत में परसेंटेज का वोटर नहीं आता। तो बात ये होता है कि इसका मतलब है कि हमारे मेजोरिटी वाले जो हैं वो
सही प्रतिनिधित्व भी नहीं कर रहे हैं।
हाँ, तो
उसमें भी
ये एक चीज है। दूसरा चीज है, कोई पार्टी आप देखिए, मैं आपको बताता हूँ कि लोग कहते हैं कि बीजेपी के पास 2 सीट थी 1984 में, अभी इतना सिंगल मेजोरिटी बन के आ गया। लेकिन 1984 में बीजेपी की वोट शेयर जो थी वो 8% थी। ओके, 2004 में लेफ्ट की वोट शेयर जो थी वो उससे कम थी, लेफ्ट की मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट जो थे वो ज्यादा थे। मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट 2004 लेफ्ट कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसीज के जो थे वो थे रफली अराउंड 40+। अब देखो बहुजन समाज पार्टी कुछ 15% वोट लिया 2014 पार्लियामेंट इलेक्शन में, एक भी सीट नहीं पाया यूपी में, जीरो हो गया। तो की बात होती है, तो बात होता है कि हमारे रिप्रेजेंटेशन सिस्टम में एक बहुत बड़ा मामला है इशूज, इसको कोई एड्रेस करने के लिए नहीं चाहते। मैं ये बात कई पॉलिटिकल डिस्कशंस में मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट के प्रेजेंट में मैंने रेज किया था। ये बॉस ये हमारा सही मुद्दा है। अब कोई पॉलिटिकल पार्टी, हर पॉलिटिकल पार्टी जब अपोजिशन में आता है वो ऑनेस्ट पॉलिटिकल पार्टी बन जाता है, वो करप्शन निकालने के लिए बात करता है।
कुछ हमारे यहाँ नैतिक मूल्य हैं,
के बाद में सब लोग ऑनेस्ट बनना चाहते हैं,
कुछ हमारे यहाँ
गणतंत्र को बनाना चाहते हैं।
जी
ये सब करना चाहते हैं।
कुछ हमारे यहाँ नैतिक मूल्य हैं, किसान, मजदूर, डिप्रेस्ड क्लास, महिलाएं, गरीबी, ये नैतिक मूल्यों को लेकर के जो विपक्ष में रहता है तभी उसकी आंख खुलती है, और जब सरकार में रहते हैं तो समझ में नहीं आता है कि ये कहाँ गए मुद्दे।
हाँ, तो ये बात होता है। तो दैट इज बिकॉज दैट दे आर नॉट जेन्युइनली कंसर्न्ड विद द पीपल्स प्रॉब्लम, दे आर कंसर्न्ड इन विनिंग द पावर, सो हाउ टू गेट द पावर। So that is how it works about it. So this is a major crisis for democracy in India today, and how the new generation is going to get out of it in order to build a new India through democratic forces and through democratic these things. It's very important. लोग कांग्रेस पार्टी के बारे में बहुत सारा बात कहते हैं। मैं बोला कि आप जब जो इसको समझ लेंगे कांग्रेस पार्टी के बारे में, तो आप कभी इसके बारे में उतना मुद्दा नहीं उठाएंगे। पहला बात रहा कि दिस इज नॉट द सेम कांग्रेस पार्टी दैट गेव यू फ्रीडम, दिस इज अ फैमिली पार्टी, लाइक ऑल फैमिली रन्स लाइक अ फैमिली पार्टी। अब वो खुश हैं तो आप खुश हैं, आप नाराज हैं तो नाराज हैं, बस काम ही खत्म है। तब इसमें आप ये सारा बात बड़ी बात उठाने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है। So fundamentally what India needs to a lot of good political parties who could be able to citizenship about it.
जो नियत की अच्छी, नियत सही होनी चाहिए।
हाँ, तो बहुत सारे लोग का नियत सही होता है, जैसा हम लोग सब समझते थे हमारे अरविंद केजरीवाल साहब का नियत बहुत सही है, लेकिन अभी हम लोग पता चला वो तो
सबसे बड़े
क्लियर बन गए। तो जो आदमी चुटकी में कुर्सी फेंकता था, वो अभी कुर्सी के अलावा कुछ दिखता ही नहीं है, उसको इलेक्शन के अलावा कुछ दिखता नहीं है ना। तो ये
अंत में वही आ जाते हैं लोग, वही आगे सब
लोग बदलते रहते हैं वगैरह वगैरह, वो सारा whole question is that our institutions should be on the right track. So that is possible. Societies are देखो बहुत जगह लिबरल डेमोक्रेसीज है, यूरोप में है, जर्मनी में है, फ्रांस में है, ऑस्ट्रेलिया में है। कहीं पर पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज डायनास्टिक नहीं है जितना हमारे यहाँ पर है। इंडिया, पाकिस्तान, बांग्लादेश, हमारे यहाँ पर सारा डायनास्टिक है ना। हमारा पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज डायनास्टिक है, हमारा बिजनेस हाउसेस डायनास्टिक है, हमारा एकेडमिक सिस्टम भी डायनास्टिक है। तो if you are a son of a professor, the possibility of being a professor is very easy, relatively easy as opposed to this. ये भी है हमारे इधर, ऐसे बात नहीं है। तो हमारा सारा सिस्टम ही ऐसे ही बन गया है। ये हमारा बॉलीवुड डायनास्टिक है, आलिया भट्ट के अलावा कुछ दिखता ही नहीं है। तो ये सारा चक्कर है हमारे इधर। So we are going through this terrible mindset problem, and it is very important in modern society to survive that we need to have appreciation for merit, appreciation for ability, and appreciation for this about it. अब जब किसी का आवाज अच्छा है, वो जब हिंदू है या मुसलमान है, उससे क्या फर्क पड़ता है। अब मोहम्मद रफी जो है मोहम्मद रफी है, जो आशा भोसले वो आशा भोसले।
बिल्कुल।
तो दुनिया को तरक्की करने के लिए तो आपको मेरिट के ऊपर, एबिलिटी के ऊपर में नजर रखना पड़ेगा। आप जब जात पात धर्म में पकड़ते बैठे रहोगे तो बस आप जहाँ हैं वहीं रहेंगे। दुनिया बहुत आगे निकल चला जाएगा, और आपका जो सबसे अच्छा आदमी होगा वो भी भागेगा।
मुजीब सर,
बहुत धन्यवाद सर।
12:38. Okay, we just need to wind up the class.
Thank you so much.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you.
And we'll come at